Hello, CH is true, and this is a follow-up on radical talk on religion. I'm going to try to post that video below. So you really need to watch that to get a sense of what I'm going to talk about, because a lot of people who watched that original video tried to pigeonhole me. I'm either religious, in which case they start wanting to talk about whether God exists or not. And you know how stupid both sides of that argument are. If you've been watching my channel for a long time, you're intelligent enough to know how utterly stupid and ridiculous most people on both sides of that argument are. The most ridiculously unphilosophical statements or claims or bananas or all kinds of nonsense arguments. Or they probably think that I'm an atheist and that I'm talking about how logic and reason are going to prevail. I'm not interested necessarily in what always passes for logic and reason prevailing. I'm neither one of these things because I don't fit in a box. I can't fit in a box. You see my frame here? I don't fit in a box. I'm too big. So I will not fit in a box. I'm going to instead talk about the Western tradition as a whole and the profound schism within that Western tradition between its communal, horizontal tradition and its vertical, ascension-oriented tradition. There is a similar schism in the East within Buddhism, let's say between Hinayana, which is about getting off the wheel of life, and Mahayana, which is about not doing that and staying and helping your fellow beings. I don't believe that there's as much of a similar division within Judaism, Islam, and let's say indigenous religions on the planet. I think it's a little different because individual religion and culture are not as separated. In Hinduism and Buddhism, there's that bit of separation. In the West, there's an extraordinary separation. And there has been in a lot of ways since Christianity took over. Because by culture, the West is Greco-Roman. Its origins are in Greece and Rome. And yet, with the takeover of Christianity, there was you could say, a Middle Eastern overlay on top of that. Mixed with a lot of East, mixed with a lot of Eastern Platonic and even some Gnostic ideas that got in there as well. And so you have within the West a very profound tension between the ascension, the upward call. The I as an individual, I'm going to forswear sin, I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to look at you-know-what, and then what I'm not supposed to look at, and I'm just going to go right up there to spirit. Right out of here. And of course part of that is giving up the old friends that you used to do whatever with, and not for those of you who are kids, you're not robbing from your mom, which is good. Okay, I'm glad. If being saved means, as you call it, means being a better person, I'm all for it. And yet what one notices over time is that the, quote, sinners have remembered something that the, quote, righteous have not. And that is that they remember that they are part of the universe, that they are part of a community. No, it is not the blessed community. I agree. It is not a reformed community. It is not a particularly righteous community. That community may be about to steal gum from a candy store or whatever, and I certainly am not going to favor that. But they remember something that the righteous and the redeemed forget. And it's not simply charity, it's not simply forgiveness, it's not simply love. It's the sense of a connection. I would imagine that a similar thing would happen in the East with the asceticism and that type of thing. Not always. But there is also a tendency among the righteous and the redeemed to forget something. That is a very powerful pull within the prophetic Western religious tradition. The writings of the prophets. The writings of the even the early Christians. I mean, dare I say, but the early Christians held property in common. I know, am I on the FBI's list for saying that? I don't know, but it's the truth. It's there. Are you or have you ever been an early Christian? If you know your history, you'll get that reference. And so the idea of the blessed community, which, by the way, influenced the progressive tradition. If you look at Thoreau and Gandhi, let's say, neither of them were Christians, and yet the idea of the blessed tradition came to them in a lot of ways through the Quakers and the Anabaptists. The early socialists were inspired by the Radical Reformation, as well as the Enlightenment, as well as they were even the philosophical materialists. Those who were like Marx would acknowledge the Radical Reformation as an influence. It's not some big secret. And so you then have the other tradition, the blessed community. And so there is this tension, this schism. Now I promised that this was not just going to be about religion. This was going to have to do with secular Western philosophy too. There's a very similar division when you get to the Western philosophical tradition in the modern sense. Let's say between atheists. On the one hand, you have Rand, individualism. And there's a similar upward movement here, away from irrationalism, away from sensuality, away from mysticism, up to this supremely rational, strong, John Galt type figure. That is their secular form of becoming saved and becoming really annoying. Let's be honest. Righteous and redeemed people of all stripes, religious and secular, become annoying. I'm not saying don't be righteous and redeemed. I'm just saying don't be annoying. Do not forget that other half of the, let's say for you secular folks, the Western tradition, and that is the communal. The very rich tradition of 19th century philosophical materialist radicalism. The philosophers Rand hated. Fourier, Robert Owen. I don't dare say Marx. I know you'll have all kinds of associations and conniption fits and all the rest of it. Okay, all right. I don't dare say Emma Goldman either, but you'll find the idea of the secular blessed community in those writings. And yes, they were inspired by the earlier Christian socialism. Yes. But you, my Randian viewers, are also inspired by earlier Western philosophical traditions that are, dare I say, mystical and irrational, as you would call them, by your standard. And so we have the two traditions. We have the vertical and we have the horizontal. And humanity needs both. If we simply have the horizontal, we are lost as critically thinking beings. If the group says go out and get hammered on New Year's Eve tonight, you'll do it because you won't have any critical discernment. Because if you are only for yourself, who are you? But if you are not for yourself, who will be for you? That's the kind of Jewish middle way concept from Rabbi Hillel. It's the middle way between the Western individualist tradition and, let's say, the more communal traditions that were then, you could say, in the East. Well, Israel is right there in the middle, right? So you have that middle way, the Via Media. You need the Via Media. We need the middle way. We need the individual in the community. We need a love in the world. We need a willingness to take our spiritual selves, however understood. Okay, for atheists, you'll understand this concept differently, but it's the same idea. To take your reason, to take your mental capacity, to take if you're a believer, you'd say your spiritual capacity, and channel that out into the world and actually transform it. Ask not what your planet can do for you, either as a selfish, in a self-centered, self-interested sense, or in the sense that the planet owes you while you're out spiritually evolving, okay? But ask not what your planet can do for you, but ask what you can do for your planet. All right. For the wise, I think you'll understand what I'm saying. For the foolish, you'll try to fit me into a box. But to all of you, I wish you a happy 2015. CHistrue, over and out.